Iran just destroyed America's $1 billion missile defense radar. That's the headline you're seeing everywhere. And it's the perfect headline because it pushes three emotional buttons at once: humiliation, vulnerability, and urgency. It makes you feel like the shield is gone, the sky is open, and the next strike is inevitable. But before you let that story lock into your brain as fact, you have to do something the internet hates: slow down and separate what's confirmed from what's claimed from what's being sold. Because right now, there are actually multiple radar stories being mashed together into one viral narrative. And if you don't untangle them, you'll come away believing something absolute that the evidence doesn't fully support. So here's what you're getting in this breakdown right up front. First, what the credible reporting actually says was hit, where, and how certain we can be. Second, what a billion-dollar radar really is in modern missile defense, and why radar damage matters even when the rest of the system still exists. Third, what changes in the real world if a major radar is damaged? What doesn't change? And the three signals you should watch next to know whether this is a temporary wound or a structural crack. And I'll give you the mini payoff early. The scariest part of this story isn't a radar being damaged. The scariest part is the delivery shock that follows when confidence drops, because you don't need to destroy all defenses to change behavior. You only need to prove that a few things can leak through. Now, let's get the basics straight. When people say America's $1 billion missile defense radar, they're usually talking about a very large early warning radar system, one of those massive phased array radars that can track long-range ballistic missiles at huge distances. In this case, a lot of the reporting and chatter has centered on a U.S. early warning radar at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, often described around the $1.1 billion mark. Separately, there's a second radar story that's also circulating: a THAAD-related radar, the ANTPY-2, which is a key sensor for high-end missile defense. That one is often described as being worth hundreds of millions, not a full billion. And then there's a third radar story in the region, reporting about a THAAD radar in Jordan that was damaged in a drone strike. Do you see what's happening? Three different radar narratives, different systems, different countries, different levels of confirmation. But online, they're all being stitched into one sentence: Iran destroyed America's billion-dollar radar. Now, what can we say with the most confidence? There is credible reporting that an Iranian strike hit and damaged a U.S. early warning radar in Qatar at Al Udeid, and that Qatar confirmed it was hit and damaged. That's the closest thing to the billion-dollar radar story being rooted in publicly reported facts. There's also credible reporting that Iran has claimed to have hit THAAD-related radar infrastructure in the Gulf, including in the UAE, and that open-source imagery has been used by some outlets to argue a radar site was struck. But the level of official confirmation on destroyed versus damaged is not the same across all those claims. And this matters because headlines love the word destroyed for one simple reason: it feels final. Destroyed feels like no defense left. Damaged feels like still complicated, and complicated doesn't go viral. So now let's talk about why radar damage is such a big deal in the first place. Missile defense is not a single weapon. It's a chain: detect, track, identify, decide, engage. If you break the chain early, at detection and tracking, you can make the rest of the chain less effective even if interceptors still exist. That's why high-end radars are such valuable targets. They are the eyes. And in any fight, taking away the eyes doesn't just reduce your ability to stop threats. It changes your confidence, your timing, and your posture. Now think about what a big early warning radar actually does. It's not just watching for missiles. It's building a picture. It's tracking trajectories. It's feeding data into command systems. It's helping decide what's coming, where it's going, how fast it's moving, and what should be launched to intercept it. So when a radar is damaged, the first effect is simple: reduced warning time. And reduced warning time is everything. Because defenses don't need hours. They need minutes, sometimes seconds. If you compress those seconds, you increase the chance that something gets through, not because your interceptors are bad, but because you saw it later, tracked it with less precision, and had fewer chances to engage. Now, here's the part that will make you smarter than most of the internet in one sentence. In missile defense, perfection is not the standard. Probability is. Defense is a probability game. You build layers to raise the odds, but you never promise 100%. And in a probability game, losing a sensor can move the odds, not to zero, but down enough that behavior changes. And behavior change is the real shockwave. Because once commanders believe that warning time is shorter and the picture is less clear, they reposition assets. They tighten posture, they raise alert levels, they shift operations, they move high value targets further away, and every one of those actions has a ripple effect. That's why radar hit becomes a big deal, even if nobody can prove the radar was totally destroyed. Now, let's address the word destroyed directly, because this is where people get manipulated. Destroying a radar is harder than people think, not because radars are magical, but because destroyed means non-functional and not rapidly recoverable. Radars can be damaged and still operate at reduced capacity. Radars can have components swapped. Radars can be taken offline and repaired, and the US military has redundancy in many cases. Other sensors, other nodes, other layers, though redundancy is never perfect and it's never free. So if you see someone claiming the radar evaporated or America has no defense left, that's your cue that you're watching storytelling, not careful analysis. The more honest way to frame it is this. A key sensor appears to have been hit and damaged, and the impact depends on how severe that damage was and how quickly redundancy and replacement can restore coverage. Now, why would Iran target radars? Because Iran doesn't need to win a full war at sea or in the air to create leverage. Iran needs to raise the cost of the US and partners operating in the region. It needs to create uncertainty. It needs to force defensive spending and constant alert posture. It needs to push energy and shipping risk premiums higher. It needs to create political pressure. A radar hit is perfect for that because it strikes the idea of safety. It doesn't just damage hardware, it damages confidence. Now, let's connect this to the bigger strategic picture. When the region is saturated with drones and missiles, the real contest becomes sustainability. How long can you keep interceptors stocked? How long can you keep crews at high readiness? How long can you keep the network functioning under repeated pressure? This is why you're seeing so much discussion and credible reporting about interceptor stocks, defense strain, and the need to replace or restore key sensors quickly. Because an air and missile defense network isn't set it and forget it. It's a living system, and in this kind of conflict environment, the attacker's goal is to keep it living under stress. Now, here's a question you might be asking. If the radar was hit, why isn't everyone talking about it the same way? Because there's a difference between what can be said publicly and what is known privately. Some details are classified. Some nations in the region don't want to publicly advertise vulnerabilities. Some governments want to avoid panic. And in the absence of clean official detail, the internet fills the gap with certainty, and certainty is what gets you played. So here's how you stay grounded. You watch for 3 signals. Signal 1. Do officials quietly move to replace or redeploy key sensors? This is the most honest indicator because it's action, not words. If you see credible reporting about urgent replacement efforts, that suggests the damage mattered operationally. Signal 2. Do you see changes in defensive posture? More interceptors deployed, more patrols, more alert levels, more coordination, more escorts. Not because defense failed, but because defense is adjusting to new risk math. Signal 3. Does the attack pattern change? If radars are being targeted repeatedly, it suggests a deliberate campaign to degrade the sensor layer, not a one-off strike. And that is strategically meaningful. Now, let's talk about what this does not mean. It does not mean the US has no defense. It does not mean the sky is open. It does not mean a single radar loss collapses a multi-layer network of Patriots, THAAD components, ship-based systems, fighters, and other sensors. But it does mean something real. The system has friction, and friction is what attackers exploit. Now, I want to address the 1 billion number itself, because this is another place where headlines manipulate you. A big number is a shortcut to seriousness. If I tell you something cost $1 billion, your brain immediately thinks catastrophic. But cost is not the same as consequence. Sometimes a cheap weapon causes huge consequences. Sometimes an expensive asset is redundant enough that consequences are manageable. So don't let the price tag be the argument. Let the behavior be the argument. If the US is rushing to replace it, it mattered. If posture changes, it mattered. If the network continues functioning with minimal disruption, the consequence may be smaller than the headline implies. Now, here's the deeper point that makes this story worth understanding, even if you don't care about military hardware. This is an energy story. Because missile defense isn't just about bases, it's about shipping confidence. When the region looks unstable, oil and gas prices don't move only because barrels disappear. They move because delivery becomes uncertain, insurance premiums spike, ships reroute, delays stack, markets reprice risk. And that's why a radar hit can create economic shock even if no oil facility is struck. It raises the sense that the region is in a new phase, one where infrastructure and the defensive network itself are targets. Now, I'm going to give you the cleanest way to interpret this without falling into either camp, doom or denial. Camp 1 says, this proves U.S. defenses are useless. Camp 2 says, this proves nothing happened. Both are lazy. The adult interpretation is, a high-value sensor appears to have been hit and damaged. That matters because it can compress warning timelines and change the risk math for defense. But it does not automatically imply total collapse, and the true impact depends on severity, redundancy, and speed of replacement. That's the truth that survives beyond today's algorithm. Now, what happens next? 3 realistic paths. Path 1. Rapid restoration. The radar is repaired or coverage is restored through redundancy, replacement, or repositioning, and the network stabilizes. The headline fades. The risk premium lingers but doesn't spiral. Path 2. Repeated pressure. Iran continues targeting sensors and nodes, not necessarily destroying everything, but keeping the network stressed. In this path, the system still functions, but the cost rises. Interceptors burn, posture tightens, markets stay nervous. Path 3. Escalation through miscalculation. A degraded sensor picture contributes to a higher chance of mistakes. Wrong identification, wrong timing, a leak that hits something sensitive, and then political pressure forces faster responses. This path doesn't require anyone to want a bigger war. It requires a crowded environment and reduced clarity, and that brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. In modern conflict, the scariest weapon isn't always the missile, it's the loss of clarity, because once clarity drops, everything becomes more dangerous. Defense gets harder, mistakes get more likely, and escalation becomes easier. So don't let a viral headline decide your reality. Make it earn it. Ask, what radar, where, confirmed by whom? Ask, damaged or destroyed? Ask, what actions follow? Replacement, redeployment, posture changes. Those 3 questions will tell you more than any thumbnail. Now I want your take. Do you think the bigger danger in this conflict is the physical damage to high-value assets, or the psychological and economic ripple, where even limited sensor damage forces a region-wide risk premium that doesn't go away? Drop your answer.